This past weekend, several people sent me videos about a Stanford study on algorithmic hiring, all making essentially the same claims. And because of my work in hiring and career alignment, I wanted to make sure that I actually understood what the study found before saying anything about it. So I read all of it, the full 32-page paper, the published summary, and a Q&A with the researchers. And what's being reported on social media isn't what the study says. What's spreading isn't the study's actual findings, it's people inferring things from it and reporting those inferences as fact. The version circulating goes something like this. Most companies use the same ATS algorithm. Your first application generates a score. It's probably biased and discriminates against you, and the score follows you from company to company, which is why you keep getting rejected. That's not what the study found. And I get why it lands. We're in a volatile environment with layoffs, mass unemployment, ghosting, rejections at scale. And when you're frustrated and someone hands you an explanation for why it's happening, it's easy to have a knee jerk reaction and share it before you verified it. That's not at all a character flaw on anyone. That's just how social media works. But that dynamic makes misinformation an accelerant. And in a job market this fragile, that has real consequences. Here's what the research actually studied. One vendor, Pymetrics, whose tool has applicants play a series of short games to assess behavioral traits. There are no resumes, no names, no demographic information collected. The bias that they found actually emerged from gameplay patterns across 156 large employers, the majority of which have annual revenues of at least $5 billion, all using that one vendor's tool. The comparison data that they reference comes from 108 Fortune 500 firms in a separate prior study. Small businesses, startups, and mid-sized companies, they're not in this research. That's the scope. Now, and this is important, the racial disparities and bias findings in this study are real and they are significant. I'm not discounting that. Black and Asian applicants were adversely impacted at rates that triggered legal thresholds under US employment law. That finding matters and deserves serious attention. What the study also demonstrates is that when multiple employers rely on the same vendor, correlated outcomes become possible, meaning the same candidates can get systemically shut out across multiple employers. That's the monoculture argument. It's a serious structural concern, but it's demonstrated empirically only for this one vendor in this one study. It's not a proven universal claim about the broader hiring market. Here's where the social media narrative breaks down. Most job seekers interact with ATS platforms on every application. Workday, Greenhouse, Bamboo HR. Very few have encountered Pymetrics. So the natural assumption is that this research is about the tools that we recognize, but it isn't. Pymetrics isn't an ATS. It's a separate behavioral assessment tool that some employers add as an optional step in their hiring process. There is one detail from the full paper that's worth being precise about. Within Pymetrics specifically, gameplay data is stored and reused across applications for up to 330 days. So if you applied to multiple Pymetrics screen positions within that window, then your gameplay results would carry over. That's real, but that's not the same as an ATS score following you across unrelated platforms and companies, which is what's being claimed. The mechanism is being wildly overstated and misapplied. The study also mentions an AI platform called HireVue, but only to illustrate that vendor concentration in hiring is a broader market reality. But the study never examined HireVue's algorithms or data, and Pymetrics and HireVue are not the same company. But probably most importantly, the researchers themselves stated explicitly that there's no causal evidence in this paper. Correlation, yes, but cause and effect, no. The study also suggests applicants need to submit 25 applications to ensure at least one recommendation. But that figure applies only to Pymetric screen positions. Candidates today are submitting hundreds of applications, often to roles that they're unqualified or overqualified for because the market has pushed them into a volume game as a survival strategy. The research doesn't account for that reality. And that gap between what the study models and what the candidates are actually living is exactly why translating academic research directly into job seeker advice is more complicated than it looks. But here's what actually concerns me. The researchers did important, rigorous work, but in the current environment, nuanced research travels fast and arrives oversimplified. What we're seeing is people inferring conclusions that the study doesn't make, reporting those inferences as fact, and millions of people sharing that, only compounding the problem with every post. And I want to be clear, the frustration driving that is legitimate. The job market is broken for a lot of people right now. That's real. But that's exactly why getting the facts right matters. Spreading a misread finding doesn't help the people who are hurting. It just adds noise to an already confusing and painful process and pulls us further away from actually solving the problem. That responsibility doesn't just sit with content creators. It's something that researchers and institutions also have to reckon with when they publish in this environment. How findings are framed and what inferences they make easy, that's part of the work too. I've done my best in this video to not do the same thing that I'm critiquing, but I'm not asking you to take my word for it either because I'm not the final authority on this topic. I've linked all three sources in my bio, the full paper, the published summary, and the researcher Q&A. Go read them for yourself. Verify what I said. And before you share anything, including this video, make sure you've done that work first.